Yo, what's up? This is Elder Sarah, and welcome back to my channel where I like to talk about all things spooky, scary, and have a little bit of fun. Today on the channel, we're going to be talking about the brand new horror movie that everybody's been hyping up so much, Weapons. We're going to go over the entire thing, breaking it down, explaining the ending, and getting into all the goodies of it. Yes, we have a lot to talk about today, but before we dive headfirst into the spoilers, there's a few spoiler-free things that I want to address here. First and foremost, I went into this movie completely blind. I hadn't even really seen the trailers too much, and I didn't know what to expect out of this whole thing. All that I knew was that a lot of people were really excited about this thing coming out. But is Weapons the next big thing in horror? How scary was it? And what really went down in this film? Weapons is 2025's latest supernatural horror film, written, produced, and directed by Zach Cregger. The film's plot follows a mysterious case of 17 children, all from the same classroom, who suddenly wake up at exactly 2:17 a.m. to miraculously run out of their front doors and into the darkness of night, seemingly having been abducted by some sort of unexplainable force out there. The movie is paced and editing as kind of like an anthology series of sorts. It's not an anthology series, but the way that we go through the story is by following individual characters throughout the whole passage, one by one picking up and leaving off with each individual character and kind of filling out the whole puzzle that is this story here. This was a very interesting way to go about putting this movie together. We'll be touching on whether or not I thought that was a good narrative device for this whole thing later on, but just keep that in mind as we move through this review here. Anyways, there is a lot to break down and cover when it comes to Weapons today, so without further ado, let's just jump into it. The film begins with a child's voiceover introducing us to the melancholy town of Maybrook, Pennsylvania. She explains that here, a bunch of people recently died in some very strange ways. The police were so embarrassed by the way that they handled the case that they've decided to just cover the whole thing up in hopes of retaining trust from the community. The girl takes us back to the triggering event for our story, where 17 kids from a third grade classroom all simultaneously awoke at 2:17 a.m. on the dot and ran, arms wide open, disappearing into the darkness of night. Ring doorbells corroborate the tale, but none were able to pinpoint the exact location that the children went. They just simply vanished. When their class's teacher arrived for school the next morning, she found only one child seated in place, Alex Lilly. The boy was subjected to interrogation by police, but admitted that he just keeps to himself. If there was a plan to run away, he didn't know about it at all. Poor kid was just left out and has no idea what happened. The school shuts down for a while before reopening and offering counseling, along with open conferences and an honest attempt at healing their establishment. From this point, our narration ends and we're hit with a little title card reading Justine. At the school's big reopening assembly, parents clash with the faculty, demanding answers for what happened to their children. A man yells from the back, demanding their teacher explain what happened to her students that night. Now here we meet Justine Gandy, the teacher of the missing students. She's a naive young woman who seems to deeply care for her students' well-being. She does her best to tell everyone she wants answers just like they do, but the crowd isn't finding that satisfactory. They think she has to know something about what happened to the class. After being mobbed to her car, Justine hits the liquor store before heading home to drink in peace. On her commute, we do see her being harassed by unknown callers and watch her grow increasingly more paranoid that someone's after her. The whole town is turned on her at this point. Startled by a knock at the door, she arms herself before running outside and finding Witch painted across her car. That night, Justine has a wicked nightmare where she heads to school just as she always does. But this time, it's 2:17 a.m., and her whole class is looking straight up undead. As the camera pans around, we see Alex Lilly bearing some really wild face paint resembling that of a clown. Waking from the dream, Justine is startled again by the image of a demented-looking woman suspended from the ceiling. Good for her, though. This turns out to have been a double dream sequence. The next day, she returns to school, requesting to resume her job in hopes that it'll get her mind right. But Principal Marcus here just isn't feeling this. He tells Justine that he knows in his heart that she loves and cares for her students, but between the angry mob of parents and her unstable drinking problem, it's just not what's best for anybody right now. She requests to speak to the surviving student, Alex Lilly, but Marcus shuts this down as well, telling her to leave the poor boy alone and to go on and get herself some therapy. Shaking off the bad meeting, Justine visits the police station to make a report for her car. While visiting, she admires an old flame of hers from across the parking lot. Not too important right now, but we'll be coming back to that. Wrapping up her errands and ignoring the advice of her principal, she follows Alex Lilly's bus back to his house and tries to intercept him here in the street. She sympathizes with the boy, opening up about how scared she is not knowing what happened to the others in their class, and offering him her support. But the boy screams back in defiance and runs home into his house. Justine is offended by this and bangs on the door demanding some answers, but no one comes to open it. After snooping around the property for a bit, she does notice that all of the windows seem to be covered with newspapers. Peering through a crack in these covers, she sees a man and a woman seated stone cold on the couch looking right back at her. Startled and heading home for another drink, she makes a call to the principal explaining that something strange is going on here and he needs to make a wellness call to the police immediately. Principal Marcus is not happy to hear that Justine was sneaking around a student's house and says if anyone should have the police called on them at this point, it's her. He hangs up saying that he's doing her a favor by forgetting this whole thing even happened. Distressed and discouraged, Justine links up with her cop friend over some ill-advised drinks, convinces him to stay the night with her, and the next day, after carting him off to his vehicle, berates the man about how the local authorities aren't doing a diligent enough job finding these kids. She decides to return solo to the Lilly residence to camp outside, get wasted, and just generally try to keep an eye on things. This goes about as well as you'd expect, and sometime after falling asleep, we see the front door slowly begin to open. An old woman creepily shuffles out of the house, wielding a pair of shears in her hand. She walks up on the car, turns, then enters the back seat of the car from off screen. The moment is tense, and we think that this is probably the end of it for Justine. But instead, the woman just clips a lock of her hair and seemingly leaves thereafter. Alright, so this very creepy scene right here concludes the first piece of our puzzle. We don't really know too much yet. In fact, we don't know anything at all about the whereabouts of the children. But it does seem like Miss Gandy here has it rough, doesn't it? I mean, wow, 17 children in her classroom just completely up and vanish, and there's no answers to where they could be at all. She has no idea what happened, and the entire town thinks that she's some kind of a witch that just like ate the kids or something. I don't know exactly what they think that she did with them, but they definitely think that she had something to do with their disappearance here. People are vandalizing her property, calling her nonstop, and really just threatening her being. There truly is a lot of depth to this character here. We'll be seeing a lot more of her before the whole thing's over. The woman's definitely got a serious alcohol problem, and in her back and forth with the principal, he brings up that there are some troubling notes from her past. Namely that she's had some interactions with the children that were deemed, inappropriate. One time, she gave a kid a ride home after they had missed the bus, and another time, she got in trouble for giving a kid a hug when they were crying on the playground. Between the principal and Miss Gandy, they both know that she's just got a really warm heart and really looks out for these kids. But these couple of flaws mixed with a DUI we hear that she has on her background check don't really look good for her to the townspeople that want to blame her for whatever happened to the children. Everyone around wants to pin something on this woman. The horror aspects that we've seen in the movie so far, while tame, have been pretty interesting. It seems that they're going for a supernatural kind of approach with things. I'm getting a very Insidious kind of vibe from this movie. Between the Double Dream fake out sequence and the way that the woman is running around with the shears here in this shot, we're definitely treading the line between goofy and scary while resting somewhere within that uncanny valley territory. And for here, it kinda works. But hey, we've got a lot more to explore here, so let's just see where this takes us. From here, we get our second title card introducing us to Archer Graff, a disgruntled gentleman who's lost his beloved son on that fateful night. Consumed by grief, Archer spends his night sleeping in his lost son's bed and slips heavily on his workload, being too consumed with unanswered questions to even focus. We see his perspective the night of the big reopening assembly held at the school, where he was the one leading the mob against Justine and even followed her home to paint witch on her car. Replaying the ring footage of his son sprinting from the house on that terrible night, he makes an inference to the direction his boy ran in, marking it down on a map. He questions the other parents about the footage and is able to draw a pattern in their collective behavior. That night, he lucid dreams of himself exiting from his body and chasing the phantom of his son into the darkness. As he approaches a bizarro world version of his own home, he witnesses as a gigantic AR materializes above his home, with the digital time of 2:17 a.m. glowing bright on the side of it. After it vanishes, Archer heads inside and follows the child to his room. As he lays in bed, stone-faced and unresponsive, Archer pours his heart out to the boy before his face contorts into that of a distorted old woman. Jolted awake and in need of some answers, he decides to confront Justine with this information and hopes that she'll have something to add to the mix. She doesn't, but to both of their shock and horror, we see Marcus, covered in blood, full sprinting, arms wide open, charging right towards them. He attacks Justine, while Archer does his best to fend him off. Something is clearly up here, as besides all of the blood covering the man, Marcus's eyes look like they're about to pop from his head. There are some super gross effects going on here. Okay, so Archer's chapter is pretty short, but man, he might be onto something here. He's definitely getting more ground covered than Justine did. Frustrated with the way that the local authorities are taking care of things, he's taken it all into his own hands and put his Sherlock Holmes hat on. The nightmare sequence where he chases the ghost of his kid around is pretty bizarre, man. When he sees this this like giant gun appear above his house in the clouds. It is super goofy. I'm not 100% sure what they were trying to go for with that. We'll touch on that a little bit more at the end of this video, but man, it was really goofy looking. But hey, more importantly, what is going on with Principal Marcus? He seems like such a chill, level-headed guy. What has caused him to tweak out like that? Our next perspective on the list is introduced to us with a title card reading Paul. Paul here is the cop that we saw shacking up with Justine earlier in the film. And we wind back to watch him as he suffers from a gnarly alcohol addiction, cheats on his wife with Justine, and uses his power as a cop to straight up bully this homeless guy named James. The first of their interactions takes place when Paul stops James from breaking into an abandoned building and subsequently gets pricked by a dirty needle while conducting a search. He kirks out and drops the junkie with a single swing, but after noticing his body cam got that, he lets him off with a warning. The guy soon forgets this, however, and a day or two later shows back up, only to be chased by an extremely agitated Paul. Paul's perspective isn't super important to the story, but it's wrapped tightly in tandem with James's. Flash another title card, we meet James a little bit better now. He's a homeless junkie who lives out in the woods, and honestly, this is such a good portrayal of this kind of character. This guy's on a mission, he needs a fix, and he's straight up willing to lie, cheat, and steal anything that he can to get what he needs. After a long day of breaking into cars, selling crap in pawn shops, and getting beat up by the police, James comes up on a seemingly abandoned Lily residence and decides that this would be the perfect place to squat for a bit, letting himself in through the back. We see that the house is in shambles, with furniture just thrown all over the place. Surprisingly, we don't see Alex anywhere, but we do find both of his parents still sitting stone cold on the couch in the living room, looking dead at the windows that have been covered in newspapers. James acknowledges that this is extremely weird, but again, the man's on a mission, and after hearing some sounds from upstairs and looting a bit more, he finds his way to the basement, where, wouldn't you believe it, the entire missing third grade class is standing entranced, before they all suddenly turn to face him. Well, he found them. Not the most likely of heroes, but he did find them, didn't he? Scared, James makes his way to the door and is pursued by Alex's now awake parents. Surprisingly, when he makes it to the door, they stop there in their tracks, opting to slam the door behind him instead of chasing him out. James goes back to the pond to deposit his hull when he spots a poster for the missing kids, here offering a $50,000 reward for finding them. He heads to the police station to inform them of his findings, but gets cut off by a super angry Paul, who chases James off into the woods. Here, James sees a mysterious old woman dressed like a clown waving at him from the bushes. Horrified, he breaks back to his tent and tries his best to collect his nerves. From outside the tent, however, we see a growing shadow emerge and hear the zipper slide up, opening his home. Grabbing a handful of dirty needles and lunging forwards, James is surprised to find that he just stabbed Paul in the face. Paul freaks out about the potential biohazard and almost straight up kills James right then and there before he belts out that he knows where to find the kids. Putting the junkie into handcuffs, Paul asks the most important question going on right now. Do you have any bloodborne illnesses? To which James assuringly responds that he doesn't exactly know. And the two make their way over to the Lily residence. Oh my god, this needles bit absolutely killed me, man. As somebody who's certified in bloodborne pathogens, I could not help but cringe and squirm when I was watching these scenes. I hope this man is able to get the doctor and that the police supply him with some good medical insurance, because oh my goodness, that is disgusting, man. Upon arrival, everything looks up to par. The door opens, Paul enters, and leaves James handcuffed in the car. What started smooth quickly turns suspicious, though, and after hours of waiting, James finally sees Paul heading back to the car. Something's up. He seems really mad. Paul rips the door open and drags James by his ankles to the house. Wonder what's going on here. We'll find out later, but for now, a new title card brings us over to Marcus, the school's level-headed and hospitable principal. We see his angle as he deals with Justine's shenanigans, and witness as he ponders whether or not to make the wellness call to the Lily residence. Instead, he opts to call Alex's parents in for a private little conference, but the boys' parents don't show up for the meeting. In their place, we get Alex's excessively creepy-looking Aunt Gladys. Aunt Gladys is an eccentric and charismatic woman who dresses herself with an insane red clown wig and wildly smeared makeup that also resembles that of a clown. Immediately and most importantly, we recognize Gladys as the woman from Justine and Archer Archer's dreams, as well as being the woman we saw in the woods earlier waving to James. Auntie here explains to Marcus that Alex's parents are very ill with consumption. They can't deal with the face-to-face meetings and desire for Gladys to handle temporary guardianship over Alex. Marcus lawfully can't accept this though, as he feels he needs to speak to Alex's parents directly, offering to come to the house to visit if that makes things any easier. This upsets Gladys, and after eyeing a ribbon on the principal's desk, she declares that he can stop by soon to check on things. The next day, Gladys surprises Marcus with a little visit to his own home. The pop-in is unannounced, random, and confusing to Marcus, but Gladys motor-mouths some word vomit about missing a bus and being exhausted, so Marcus's partner invites her in for some water. As the principal tries to make sense of all of this, Gladys requests her water be poured into a bowl. This is obviously weird, but hey, they oblige. While talking a million miles a minute as an obvious distraction, she removes a thorn-covered branch from her purse and cuts her hand with it. Marcus immediately notices that the branch is wrapped with a ribbon from his office, but before he can react, Gladys clips a lock of his partner's hair, pulls a bell from her purse, and rings it one time, here somehow entrancing Marcus exactly where he stands. Next, she snaps the branch in half, sending the man into a full-on frenzy and murdering his partner viciously. He chokes him out before bludgeoning him to death with headbutts. Gladys rinses the branch off before attaching another lock of hair, this one distinctly belonging to Justine, before pricking her finger, smearing her blood, and breaking the branch again. Marcus runs full sprint, arms open, for miles on end. As he runs, we see him distort and deform while his eyes begin to bulge from his head. He finds Justine, pursuing her like the Terminator at the aforementioned gas station until she flees into her car. He continues to chase her, but with Archer following after, Marcus is struck by an unsuspecting vehicle. The aftermath here is really gross. The principal is splattered, and the driver completely loses her mind at the sight of things. Breaking free from the framing a bit, we see Archer and Justine regroup and reconcile their differences as they both just truly want to see these kids found again. Taking a look over Archer's findings, Justine realizes that dead center in the map is Alex's house, so the two head over and stake out the residence. Yes, so finally, 3/4 of the way through this movie, we get our first kills, and they are brutal. The tone of this movie is really interesting because it's definitely like a horror movie. There's a lot of supernatural stuff going on, but it takes forever for the kills to get rolling here. At times, I can't really decide who this movie is made for because, as I mentioned earlier, it does kind of feel like an Insidious movie. It feels like it could exist within the Conjuring universe. But this movie is like hard rated R. There's a lot of cussing, there's a lot of graphic violence. The graphic nature of this thing is like really toned up in some areas. And one of those is with the kills. The kills are straight up gruesome. And I think it's safe to say that something's up with Gladys here. Throughout the film so far, she's been popping up everywhere like a ghost. She's intruding people's nightmares, and she was even popping up in the woods where James was running around, waving to her like Pennywise. What is going on with her, Alex, their house, his parents, and this whole weird witchy ritual that she's using to turn people into her zombies? When she pulls up to Marcus's house, she's got this tree branch with thorns all over it. She removes it from her purse with Principal Marcus's ribbon wrapped around the thing, and when she adds his partner's hair to it, covers it in her blood and breaks it, it turns him into a monster. The guy just frenzies out and goes after the target whose hair she placed on the twig. It's pretty interesting, and the way that he was running around with his arms spread wide open exactly like those kids did definitely makes me believe that there's something going on here, doesn't it? She even says to Principal Marcus, "You didn't call the cops yet, did you?" Perhaps this is because she knows back at Alex's house there's all those kids hiding in the basement. Something tells me we're about to learn a lot more about that. Before we move any further though, I do want to note on how weird her whole getup is. Like, there's gotta be something to that insanely abrasive wig and clown-like makeup that she wears, doesn't it? The whole thing kind of feels like a Pennywise reference to me, even with her popping up in people's dreams and stuff like that. It's really bizarre. At the very least, this woman's a witch or something to that sort. Our final title card informs us that now we'll be seeing things from little Alex Lilly's perspective. We're first introduced to his very loving family and super ideal home life situation. Besides getting bullied by his classmates at school, the kid's got it all going for him back at home. Well, until his nocturnal and very ill Aunt Gladys comes to stay with them and uses her weird thorny tree thing to suck the souls from his parents. Immediately after she arrives, things get rough for poor Alex. After being abandoned at school and forced to walk all the way home, he finds his parents under some sort of a spell, zombified at the dinner table. He does his best to snap them out of it, but when Gladys introduces herself and orders the boy to his room, things start looking bleak. The next morning, Auntie puts her full power on display by ordering Alex to keep everything going on inside of the house a secret and forces him to watch as she does her thorny branched routine and make his parents stab themselves repeatedly in the face with forks. Horrified, he agrees to this, but only because she straight up tells him that she can make them eat each other if she wants to. Very, very clearly terrified, the boy juggles days at school with taking care of his zombie parents, routinely feeding them soup and staying out of his evil witchy aunt's way. One night, he hears her crying for help, and when he checks on her, she explains that with his help, she could fix herself up and move back home again, leaving him and his family to return to normality. Finally seeing a way out of this insane routine, he asks her just how he can make this happen. To this, she responds that she'll need a single item from each of his classmates at school. Alex doesn't understand how this could help exactly, but Gladys says it might be exactly what she needs. The next day at school, Alex eyes the classroom before deciding the best thing to grab would be everyone's name tags from the cubby bins. He retrieves these, but is caught in the process by his teacher, Justine. She tries to communicate with the poor child that she can tell he hasn't been doing too well, but the little guy puts his walls up and instead returns to his activities. Between these cubby labels and some old Valentine's Day cards he found, this does seem to be enough for Auntie to pull off her big stunt. That night, at exactly 2:15 a.m., Alex is awoken by Gladys stirring up spells in her cauldron in the kitchen. Moments later, at exactly 2:17, she rings a little bell and we see as all of the kids wake up to flee into the darkness. This time, we see them all funnel into Alex's home. From here, we see how Gladys fooled the town into thinking that nothing was going on in their house, complete with hiding the kids for a search and telling officials that the dad had a little stroke. That's the only reason why he's so zombied out right now. As time passes, Alex is forced to juggle school with taking care of a ton of people that he's got to feed soup to now. Well, we eventually catch up to the day that Paul and James appear at his house. Okay, so after that huge exposition dump, we've got a lot to touch on here. First, poor Alex, man. Seemed like the kid really had a great life going for him at home until his aunt came and straight up ruined it for everybody. When she moves in, we see a shot of Alex's father helping her bring in this plant to her room. It's like a little twig tree covered in thorned branches. Obviously, this is where she gets the twigs for her witch rituals. We even see shots of her at night praying to this thing, meditating in front of it. It's so weird. We don't know exactly what this thing is, but somehow its power is what's fueling her in all of this. Aunt Gladys moves in with the family because she's actively dying of some kind of illness, and she plans to use the parents' life force and vitality in order to fuel herself to live longer, as witches do, you know. But it just wasn't enough, and she needed the life force of all of those children in order to really max out on what she's trying to do here. Classic witchy behaviors, of course. And man, honestly, I do not blame Alex. The boy was tricked into all of this. He just wants his family back. Can you imagine how tired that kid's gotta be of eating soup all the time? What was with the soup? What is up with that? I don't exactly know why that was there. Did this movie just have like a massive product placement ad from Campbell's or something like that? What was going on there? Anyways, let's wrap this thing up, see where it goes, and cover the ending. Alex is shocked to find the two men standing entranced in his foyer, but his aunt instructs him to head up to his room. They need to pack and get ready to abandon the area before things get too risky, drawing lines of salt around the house, separating the cursed from the clean-spirited. Auntie instructs Alex not to cross these barriers. Justine and Archer arrive to the premises and see Paul come out to beckon them inside. Following his lead, they enter the house where they notice Paul and James lurking in the shadows. Paul gives Justine another beckon, but Archer realizes that something has to be very wrong here. He tries to warn Justine, but it's too late. She steps over the salt line and the two men lunge from the dark at their targets. Alex hears the commotion downstairs and gets very scared, seeking to join his mom, dad, and even his aunt on the other end of the hall. Only issue, the salt barrier that Gladys told him not to cross. He does so anyway, and predictably, his parents break into chase and follow him to the bathroom, banging on the door, trying to get in. Back downstairs, Archer and Justine get the upper hand, dispatching both Paul and James with pops to the head. Archer searches the basement, where he finds both the kids and Gollum wearing a nightgown. Gladys attacks him and takes him under her control, sending him back up to subdue Justine. Alex, upstairs and looking for a way to not get eaten by his parents, fashions a little ritual stick of his own from the magical tree and wraps it in hair pulled from Gladys's wig. After he snaps the twig in half, Gladys panics before fleeing from the house and comically running through the neighborhood while being pursued by the entire class of third graders. These kids truck it like Derrick Henry, busting through homes, windows, fences like they're a wild stampede of buffalo hunting down this screaming old woman in broad daylight. They catch the old witch, tackling her to the ground and tearing her to shreds as she dies a brutal, vicious, and bloody death. Things settle back down at the Lily House. Archer drops Justine, regaining himself and frantically looking for his son. He finds him, holding him tight and rejoicing in the moment. Justine goes upstairs to find Alex hugging his parents, who still seem to be stuck in that cursed state. A voiceover here plays out, informing us that while Archer recovered pretty fast, the actual children would remain cursed for quite some time, with only a few of them just starting to learn how to speak again. Alex, unfortunately, wouldn't get his perfect family back. The kid gets sent off to live with who we are told is a much nicer aunt, though I don't really know considering how his family's been going so far. While his parents are now being fed soup in a hospital somewhere else, seemingly permanently stuck in their vegetated state. Wow, what a lukewarm way to leave things off here. I'm pretty sure that all the kids made it out here. I think that they're gonna be okay, since some of them have already started to talk. I'm sure it won't be too long before it catches up to the rest of them. Though, after what they did to that old woman, they're probably gonna need some extensive therapy to get over all that. Do you think that they remember everything that happens in the trance? I imagine they probably do. Regardless, Alex's parents, Paul and James, were not quite as lucky, were they? And when the narration tells us that Alex was sent to live with his other aunt that seems a lot nicer to take care of him, I don't know how to feel about that. I mean, yeah, his parents seemed nice enough, and they didn't really know too much about Aunt Gladys when she came to live with them, but that could mean that, their other aunts and stuff like that could be pretty weird. We don't know. We have no reason to believe one way or the other, I guess. Personally, though, I'd keep my eyes peeled if I was that boy. Why didn't Gladys, or Alex's mom, puppeteered by Gladys, kill Justine in the back of the car earlier in the movie? Why did she cut off the lock of hair and go through the whole charade with that? I mean, she had her right there. The scissors were to her throat. She could have just ended the whole thing. At one point, when we see Alex retrieving the name tags from the cubbies of the classmates at school and Justine catches him in the act, I thought for a second there that she was gonna catch on that something was happening here. Maybe something was gonna tip her off, and that would make us believe that she did in fact have some kind of inference on what happened to the kids the whole time. That would add an interesting dimension to the whole thing, and kind of a conflict between her and Archie's interests. It would kind of make sense in a roundabout way, but no, they didn't decide to go with that. The whole thing just goes right over her head, and it's just another scene. The tone of the movie is really interesting. I touched on this earlier, but I'm just not 100% sure what kind of audience this thing was made for. It's graphic, it's visceral, it's violent, and it's disgusting, but at the same time, it feels like it plays out for a younger adult kind of audience. It really vibes as if it could take place in the Insidious or Conjuring universes. I think a lot of people are really gonna like this movie, but just for me personally, I felt kind of lost in the tone and the pacing of it all. The pacing of this movie is rough. It is really, really long, and the whole anthology aspect of the whole thing doesn't really help it out too much. Personally speaking, I didn't think that all of the parts in here were 100% necessary. They could have explained all of this with just 3 chapters for real. A lot of things felt like it was thrown into the movie just for the comic relief of it all. And with a runtime hitting over 2 hours, I don't know if all of that was entirely necessary. Another thing I gotta loop back around to right now, the weird AR dream. That was so bizarre to me. It felt so out of place with the rest of the movie, and for a second there, I thought that we were about to do some kind of social messaging that I really just didn't feel throughout the rest of it. Okay, let's step back for a second. We see the AR appear above the house. We're talking about how this one kid, he's the only one that was bullied in his class, he's the only one that's left, everybody else went missing. The kids are all missing inside of his house. For a second there, I really thought we were going somewhere social with that. But nope. It doesn't go to that level. They don't try to do anything like that in this movie. It's just kind of a modge-podge of signaling here. At the end of the day, I suppose the reason why this is called Weapons is because the witch, used people as weapons. But, that wasn't really her goal in the whole thing. She didn't abduct the children to use them as weapons. So I don't really know why the AR would appear above the house. What she was using the children for was to steal their life force in order to grant herself longer-lasting vitality, as witches do. Maybe instead of weapons, this thing should have been called food or consumption, maybe blood bag, I don't know. But that does it for Weapons today. How'd you feel about the movie? If you've seen it, be sure to hit those comments down below and let me know what you thought about it. And likewise, let me know how you felt about our video today. However you're feeling, hit those comments down below and let me know. And while you're at it, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe for more content just like this. I'm still pretty new over here on YouTube, but I've got hours and hours of awesome horror content over on the channel for you guys to browse. Go take a look at my catalog. You'll probably find some other things you really like. And if you really enjoy them, be sure to send it over to a friend you think might enjoy it too. As always, I've been Eldritch Terror, and whether your day's been going good or bad today, I hope it gets better.